YouTube, bro. Check it out, man. Yo, where the heck is my video? I don't fake none of my reactions, bro. I don't fake none of my reactions. I ain't editing that out either, bro. Hey, coming to y'all with 15 facts about South Central. I said I was gonna do this whenever I recorded the Friday video. I think that was Tuesday, and I posted it today. South Central was a good movie. If you haven't seen South Central, bro, go watch it, bro. It's a good movie. 12 facts I didn't know about South Central. I'm not deep into South Central facts, so all of this is gonna be new to me.
Watch your bitch. Because that smooth talking snake is probably fixing to turn out.
Hollywood didn't
If you know OG Bobby Johnson but never seen South Central, watch South Central.
know what to do with this movie. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't safe, and it wasn't made to make executives comfortable. It came from a teacher who'd buried students, a director who'd done time, and a city already on the edge of collapse. The rights sold for $1. Real gang members filled the frame. The studio barely released it, and when it finally arrived, Los Angeles was already burning. This is the story of South Central, a film that failed at the box office, told the truth anyway, and changed lives long after.
Whoa, I didn't know this failed at the box office.
Number 1, the author sold the film rights for $1 just to make sure the movie got made.
What?
Donald Bakir wasn't naive. He'd spent decades teaching in South Central Los Angeles, watching gang culture up close, and seeing...
Yo, it's still crazy to me that this failed in the box office. I know it's not Boys in the Hood and Friday and all that other stuff, bro. Menace to Society, I can keep naming. But this is actually a good movie, bro. Like, the plot, the story, it's a good movie.
how deeply it shaped kids' lives. His 1987 novel, the original South Central LA Crips, told a story rooted in that reality. When director Stephen Milburn Anderson wanted to adapt it, Bakir wasn't interested in squeezing Hollywood for money. He wanted the story told. So he did something almost no author would do. He sold the film rights for $1. $1.
Wow.
Not because he didn't know the value of his work, but because he believed in the message and wanted the film to actually get made. The result became South Central, released in September 1992, just months after the Los Angeles riots, turning Bakir's story into something hauntingly timely, even if nobody planned it that way.
I do not mean to pry Buddha. I truly do not. I just want to ensure.
Number 2. The novel was written to combat gang illiteracy, and gangsters stole it from libraries. Here's the problem Bakir
Wait, they
identified.
stole the novel
Gang members
from
couldn't
libraries?
read well enough to understand why they were dying. So he wrote Crips at a reading level they could handle. He used it in his classroom curriculum. He donated copies to local libraries. Then something wild happened. Gang members started stealing the book, not from bookstores, from libraries, and directly out of his classroom. They wanted to read about themselves badly enough to commit crimes to get it. Bakir's reaction? He called it an ironic tribute and an effective way to distribute to the people who needed it the most. Most authors would be furious about book theft.
I wouldn't
Bakir
be
saw
mad.
it as proof the book was reaching exactly who it needed to reach. He used the novel in his curriculum for 12 years. Gang members stole it for 12 years. It became the most stolen book in South Central LA, which might be the most tragic measure of success in literary history. Number 3. The story was originally called The Original South Central LA Crips, and Hollywood changed it. South Central didn't start as South Central. It began as Donald Bakir's novel, The Original South Central LA Crips. That was the real title. Raw, uncomfortable, direct. When Hollywood came calling, the studio made one major change. They removed Crips from the title. Why? Because Warner Brothers didn't want a mainstream movie carrying the name of a gang. They were terrified it would look like glorification. So the film became simply South Central, a safer title for a dangerous story. The irony? The new name made it sound like just another hood movie, but the original title tells you exactly what it really was. A front row account of how gang life grabs fathers, sons, and entire neighborhoods.
You belong to the Aryans, you little sugar. We owe.
Number 4. Real gang members were hired as extras and gave permission to film. You can't just show up in active gang territory with cameras and start filming. That's how people get hurt. So the South Central production team did something revolutionary. They asked permission. They negotiated with local Crips. They hired actual gang members as background actors. They provided food to the community during shoots. They turned the production into a neighborhood event instead of an invasion. This wasn't method acting. This was documentary realism. When you see gang members in South Central, you're seeing actual gang members. When you see the streets, Those are the real streets where people were dying.
I know.
When you see the tension, that's real tension from real people who live this life every day. Hollywood productions usually build sets and hire actors to play dangerous people. South Central brought in the dangerous people and paid them to play themselves. The production team essentially said, "We're telling your story. Help us get it right." And somehow, incredibly, it worked. Nobody got shot. Nobody got robbed. The community protected the film because the film was protecting their truth.
Man, they still loped out on that PCB, Smoke.
Number 5. The film bombed at the box office, but changed lives.
Like I said,
Let's
bro,
talk
it
numbers.
blows me. I wasn't alive when this dropped, but I didn't expect it to fall in the box office.
South Central opened on 37 screens in September 1992. Opening weekend gross, $147,629.
Holy shit.
Total domestic box office, $1.37 million. Budget, $4 million. That's a disaster. Warner
Holy
Brothers lost money.
fuck.
Oliver Stone's production company took a hit. By every Hollywood metric, South Central failed. Studios want blockbusters, not boutique dramas that barely crack $1 million. But here's what box office numbers don't measure. Glenn Plummer says men still approach him decades later to tell him Bobby's final speech changed their lives. Actual fathers who got back into their children's lives because of a movie that made $1.37 million. Men who were heading down the same path as Bobby until they saw themselves on screen and chose differently. How do you calculate that return on investment? Warner Brothers lost money, but families got fathers back.
Yep.
South Central failed commercially and succeeded in ways that matter more than profits. Which metric counts? Number 6. Donald Bakir taught for 30 years in schools where 20 people died on his block. Donald Bakir taught 150 to 200 kids every single day for 3 decades at Manual Arts. Horace Mann, John Muir, about 15 of the toughest schools in America. These weren't suburban schools worried about SAT scores. These were schools where students dodged bullets on the way to class. Bakir lived on Main Street and 74th Street for 17 years. During that time, 20 people died on that block, not in South Central generally, on
That's
his
crazy.
specific block. That's more than one person per year murdered within sight of his home. Think about that. You wake up, you go teach kids how to read. You come home and there's crime scene tape where you parked your car yesterday. You do this for 17 years. You keep teaching because someone has to. You keep living there because moving feels like surrender. Eventually, Bakir moved his family to a gated community in Inglewood, not because he was weak, because he'd given South Central 30 years and survived. He'd interviewed 500 gang members, written the definitive book on Crip culture, gotten a movie made. He'd done everything one man could do. Moving his family to safety wasn't giving up.
Understand.
It was surviving long enough to tell the story.
Now, do you know where Jimmy
Look,
is?
I ain't playing games either, man.
Number 7. Tupac met Bakir at the premiere and told him, "I love the book and the movie." At the 1992
Ball.
premiere of South Central,
Tupac
Donald
Ball.
Bakir met Tupac Shakur. Tupac looked him in the eye and said, "I love the book and the movie." Bakir also shook hands with Sidney Poitier that night, spent an hour talking with him at a later film event. He was friends with Muhammad Ali, friends with John Singleton. These weren't networking connections. These were relationships built on respect for what Bakir had documented. Tupac's endorsement mattered because Tupac understood exactly what South Central was trying to do. He'd grown up around this life. He knew the difference between Hollywood's version of gang culture and the real thing. When he told Bakir he loved it, he was saying, "You got it right." 2 years later, Tupac would star in Above the Rim.
Need to
3
watch
years
Above
after
the Rim.
that,
It's gonna sound
he'd
crazy.
be dead. But in
never seen
1992,
Above the Rim.
at that premiere, Tupac recognized South Central as the truth. That validation meant something. Number 8. Warner Brothers released it on just 37 screens, with Oliver Stone's name attached. Most Oliver Stone productions got wide releases. Natural Born Killers opened on 1,510
Oliver Stone
screens.
felt.
JFK opened on
When it flopped.
1,392 screens. South Central, which Stone produced, opened on 37 screens. 37 screens. For a film produced by one of Hollywood's most bankable names. For a story about the most urgent crisis facing American cities. For a movie that critics praised and audiences needed to see. Warner Brothers basically buried it. You don't limit a film to 37 screens because you believe in it. You do it because you've already given up. The studio had Oliver Stone's name on the poster and still treated South Central like a direct-to-video release that accidentally got a theatrical run. Compare that to Boys in the Hood, which opened on 829 screens the year before and made $57 million. Studios knew there was an audience for authentic stories about South Central LA. They just didn't believe in this one enough to give it a real chance. So they dumped it in 37 theaters and watched it disappear. Number 9. It was filmed entirely on location in the real South Central LA. Hollywood loves controlled environments, sound stages, backlots, sets that look like South Central, but are actually in Burbank. South Central said no to all of that. Principal photography ran from August 1 to September 16, 1991. 7 weeks, entirely on location. Real street, 3108 Budlong Avenue. 1650 Rockwood Street. Real homes where real families live. Real detention centers where real inmates were serving time. The $2 to $4 million budget forced a documentary aesthetic, handheld cameras, natural lighting, muted colors that matched the actual environment. No Hollywood glamour. No dramatic lighting that makes poverty look beautiful. Just the raw reality of South Central in 1991. This created problems. You can't control weather, can't control noise, can't control who walks into frame, but it also created authenticity that no set could replicate. When you see Bobby's Neighborhood, that's the real neighborhood. When you see the prison yard, that's a real prison yard. The movie looks the way it looks because they filmed where it actually happened. Number 10. The NY Times named Anderson a hot new filmmaker, alongside Tarantino. Then he disappeared. Janet Maslin of the New York Times had a theory in 1992. She published her Who's Who Among Hot New Filmmakers list. 3 names. Quentin Tarantino for Reservoir Dogs, Tim Robbins for Bob Roberts, Stephen Milburn Anderson for South Central. One of these directors became the most influential filmmaker of the 1990s. One became a respected actor-director. One directed a single additional film 18 years later and largely vanished from the industry. Anderson's next film was Kea Itlash in 2010. That's it. No major studio follow-up, no franchise, no prestige TV. Just one ex-convict who made an authentic masterpiece about South Central LA, got compared to Tarantino by the New York Times, and then walked away. Maybe Hollywood didn't give him opportunities. Maybe he didn't want them. Maybe making South Central accomplished everything he needed to accomplish. But it's wild that Tarantino made 10 films and won Oscars, while Anderson made 2 films total. The director who understood prison and gang culture better than anyone in Hollywood basically disappeared after getting praised by the Times. That's not how these stories usually end. Number 11. Bakir interviewed nearly 500 gang members over 4 years to write the novel. Donald Bakir didn't observe gang culture from a distance.
That's dedication,
he embedded himself in it. Over 4 years, he interviewed almost 500 gang members. Not quick conversations. Deep interviews where he cross-referenced every story. I even knew more about Cripping than all the Crips because I cross-referenced stories, Bakir said. When he started hearing the same stories repeatedly from different sources, he knew what was true. He separated the myths from reality. He documented the actual structure, rules, and psychology of gang life in a way nobody had before. CNN noticed. They hired him as their gang expert, not an academic who studied gangs from university offices, not a cop who arrested gang members. An actual teacher who'd spent 4 years talking to 500 people inside the culture. The novel Crips became the most detailed insider account of gang culture ever written by someone outside the gang. Bakir achieved something almost impossible. He gained the trust of people who don't trust outsiders, documented their lives accurately, and turned it into a story that could reach people who needed it most.
I see it now as a coup de grace, masterstroke.
Number 12. Bakir said South Central's gang wars were more intense than Vietnam. Donald Bakir served in Pleiku during the Vietnam War. He saw combat. He lived in an active war zone. When journalists asked him to compare Vietnam to South Central during the gang wars, his answer shocked everyone. South Central was worse. I'm telling you, I've been to war, Bakir said. The gang wars were more intense. For the people in Pleiku, they were threatened all the time by violence, but they were threatened no more than the people in South Central. Think about that claim. A war veteran who survived Vietnam saying American streets in the 1980s and 90s were more dangerous. The Viet Cong shot at soldiers who signed up for combat. South Central gang members shot at teachers, kids, families who just wanted to live. In Vietnam, you knew who the enemy was. In South Central, your neighbor's cousin might kill you over colors. In Vietnam, there were rules of engagement. In South Central, drive-bys killed whoever was standing on the corner. Bakir taught in schools more dangerous than war zones. That's not hyperbole. That's a combat veteran's professional assessment. Bonus. Bakir wrote a sequel about the LA riots that's too hot for Hollywood. Donald Bakir wrote a follow-up novel called Inhale, Gasoline, and Gun Smoke, the story of the LA uprising. It chronicles the 1992 riots that erupted 5 months before South Central premiered. He's called it too hot for Hollywood and admits it will probably never get made by a major studio. Too hot for Hollywood, from a man who got a movie made with Oliver Stone, from a man whose first book was stolen by gang members, from a combat veteran who compared South Central to Vietnam. If Bakir says the sequel is too hot, believe him. As of 2024, Bakir is 79 years old, still writing, still teaching, still preserving South Central's history. He gave Hollywood one perfect movie about gang culture. They made $137 million and let it disappear. Maybe Inhale, Gasoline, and Gun Smoke never gets made. Maybe the most important story about the LA riots stays in manuscript form because the truth is too uncomfortable. Or maybe, like the first film, someone makes it happen for $1 and the right reason. South Central wasn't designed to entertain you. It was designed to warn you. It didn't come from a studio checklist or a focus group. It came from classrooms, prison yards, and streets where people didn't get second takes. The box office said it failed. Hollywood moved on, but the people who saw themselves in it didn't. Decades later, the film still matters because it told the truth when the truth was inconvenient. And sometimes that's the only kind of movie worth making.
That was a good one. That was a banger. Yeah. What else would I say? Hey, like I said, if you ain't seen South Central, bro, you should watch it, bro. Because if you don't raise your kids, the street's going to raise your kids. That's exactly what the movie is. Anyways, I'm going to get at y'all boys on the next one.